My HOA tried to trap me with a sneaky contract, so I used it against them. This story is about a property I own but rent out. This may sound strange, but I don't think I could afford to live there these days. It's become somewhat exclusive. This does not take place in the US, this is in South Africa, and I've given an approximate dollar value for local currency. A million years ago, my property was part of a large farm. I bought it about 30 years ago, long after the farm was broken up, but before there was any development near it. The piece of land I got was near the back entrance that joined into a dirt road running past. The more expensive plots were near the tarred road in the front. About 20 years ago, some of the owners got organized, we'll call them the organized owners, or OO, and had the area designated as a municipal suburb. The municipality agreed to put in tarred roads, water, and electricity if a certain percentage of the properties were developed. A construction company linked to the OO went around contacting owners. Was that good?
Yeah.
Went around contacting owners who had land but no buildings, offering to build houses at a very reasonable price, contingent on getting a minimum number of people to sign up. While this was happening, one of the OO approached me and offered to buy half my money. I agreed. The money I got for that sale, about 4 times what I'd pay for the entire chunk of land 10 years prior, combined with a small bank loan, gave me what I needed to pay for a fairly large and nice house to be built. I stayed there for a few years with my mom. I had decided to subdivide the property again and build her a house next door, but unfortunately an undiagnosed tumor took her before that house could even be started. Soon after she passed away, we moved out and started renting the property. About a few weeks before we moved out, the OO started talking about forming an HOA. I wasn't interested and left shortly after that. About 2 years later, the neighborhood OO I'd sold the land to contacted me. There were now 2 roads entering the area, the original tarred road where near the farmhouse had been, and my old dirt road back entrance, which was now tarred. The HOA was trying to get the original road blocked off to improve security and reduce through traffic, and they wanted my road to become the main and only entrance. They were also pressuring me to join. No, that sounds like a horrible idea. I said no, and I was adamant. Eventually, they accepted that, but told me they wanted to put a welcome sign near the road, and the only practical spot was on the edge of my property. They also wanted to build a small guard hut and have a security guard permanently monitoring who came and went, and they wanted that shed on my property too. We came to an agreement where they would mow the lawn and pay me the equivalent of about $35 per month in exchange for the land they needed. I was happy with this since the property was fairly large and it didn't really cost them anything since they already had a full-time gardening service. This all happened over a decade ago. They eventually got the other main road blocked off, and so the HOA has been paying for a rent-a-cop to be permanently stationed near my property, mowing my lawn and paying me enough money for takeaways each month. I'm occasionally contacted by HOA members to get me to sign up, but I'm still not interested. My property has been rented to the same tenant for all these years, and everything was going well. Until about 3 years ago, when someone scared the life out of my tenant's young daughter by making strange noises and shooting a pew-pew close to her bedroom window 3 or 4 times over about a month. This scared my tenant, and I guess it scared the HOA too, because both of them contacted me with a proposal. I joined the HOA and received exclusions from the HOA rules, including exclusions from paying the monthly fees, and in addition, they will build a wall around the entire HOA neighborhood, complete with electric fencing and security cameras. They told me they had wanted to do this for a while, but were unwilling to build a wall on property that was not in the HOA. I couldn't see the downside, so I agreed. It took just over a year to build a wall and get everything completed, which is quite fast. Then, a month to the day after everything was done, my tenant received an HOA warning about his dogs barking. He told the HOA that while the property was in the HOA, it was exempt from the rules. The HOA told him they had canceled the exemptions and that he had 30 days to comply. He contacted me and I opened some mail I'd gotten from the HOA that I'd ignored since I was supposed to be exempt. Man, did I get a surprise. They had retroactively canceled the exemptions and were claiming that I owed late fees going back over a year, that the easement agreement had been canceled and retroactively revoked because their contract allowed them to use small unused portions of HOA member land for the common good for free, that I refund them all the money paid under the easement during that period that I owed them for the garden service mowing my large lawn, and that I would be fined for each infraction my tenant failed to remedy. So this started an expensive legal process that ended with a judge telling me that what the HOA had done was mostly legal?
Mostly.
They had the right to revoke the exemptions, but had to give me 30 days notice. As I was walking to my car, the neighborhood OO told me that I was stupid to have refused to join when the HOA started, and that I could have been a founder member, and that next time I should be sure to understand the documents I signed before signing them.
Jeez.
Harsh. Neighborhood OO was right. I should have read the contract more carefully. I was also curious about what it meant to be a founding member. Spoiler, nothing. So when I got home, I grabbed the HOA contract I'd signed along with all the other documentation and started reading. I was determined to break every rule I could find a loophole to break. I didn't get past the first page. Wow. Uh-oh.
Dang.
While the street address of the property is used for all practical purposes in the city records, it has a unique property number that must be used on legal records. When I had subdivided the remaining property for my mom all those years ago, I hadn't yet started building on it. And when I gave the HOA the easement, it had been on that sliced off piece. When the HOA set up the contract, they had simply used the property number from the easement. My actual rental property, the one with the house, was an entirely different property number. The HOA did not own the easement on my rental property. They owned the easement on a completely separate piece of vacant land. The HOA had signed me up to the wrong property. The next afternoon, neighborhood Ooh drove out himself about an hour from the property to deliver and have me sign for 2 documents. One told me that my exemptions would expire in 30 days, and one stated that the easement would no longer be required after 30 days. I think he was being a little malicious in making that drive himself. Exactly 30 days to the hour after the HOA gave me that notice, I knocked on neighbor Ooh's door. He was the HOA president. I had him sign for 2 documents. The first one was notice that I planned to build a house on my HOA property, which confused him. The second notice was that the HOA had 30 days to remove the guard shed, the parts of the electric boom on my property, and the sign. He tried to engage me, but I ignored him, climbed into my car, and drove off. Early the next morning, I got a call from the HOA lawyer who explained that their structures would be staying on my property since it was an unused part of my land. I explained that I was building a house there and that the land would not be unused anymore. I could hear the smirk in his voice as he told me that building a second house just to be spiteful would not be accepted by the courts. I sure hope he could hear the smirk in mine when I told him that the property in question did not have a house, was barely large enough for one to be built, and would not be large enough for any extraneous buildings. I told him to look up the property number and call me back. I'd sliced off just enough to be legal, which was just enough to build a small house. Okay. It took them just under 5 days to get back to me. Their lawyer told me the terms of the easement meant I could not cancel without their permission. I emailed him a photo of the document they had sent me canceling the easement. That afternoon, neighbor Ooh invited me to lunch, his treat, to discuss the problem. I said, no thanks. He extended the offer 2 days later. No thanks. Others from the original Ooh contacted me. Some sounded aggressive, some sympathetic. No thanks to each. There you go. Eventually, the lawyer phoned and offered to discuss exclusions in exchange for access to my property. I said, no thanks, and please don't call me again. About 9 days before their 30 days was up, I got a call from a different lawyer who said he wanted to negotiate a surrender. His words, not mine. I agreed to meet him at his office the next day. I already had documents drawn up, and the meeting was as simple as me handing them over and him reading through. My new easement offer included everything in the old agreement. I changed mow the lawn to get the property to HOA standards and keep it there. Since it was now inside the HOA, the monthly fee would be about $500 instead of roughly $35. Increased with inflation, something the previous contract had not included. When canceled for any reason, the HOA would have to pay me a cancellation fee of around $7,500. The contract would automatically terminate 30 days after any disciplinary action was taken against me, my tenant, or the property. Any complaints were levied by the HOA against the property, or any legal action was taken against the property by anyone in the HOA. The surrender lawyer would mediate any disputes at the HOA's expense, and the HOA would pay all my legal fees if any legal action was taken against me. I had deliberately left some extreme points in there so I could appear to concede them when the HOA pushed back, which would make it easier to hold the ground on the things I actually cared about. The lawyer didn't look happy. He said my proposal sounded unfair, but that he'd have the HOA president look at it. I reminded him that in 8 days I would be setting a group of men armed with sledgehammers loose on whatever was still my property. That evening, I got an irate call from the HOA president. He told me he was never going to sign the new contract. I said, okay. He told me I was charging too much per month and that it should be the same rate as before. I pointed out that when I had signed the original contract, the area was under development and there was at least one other road in and out, but that now there was only mine, and mine was fully developed with everything they needed. Yeah, there you go. He told me I was forcing them to sign something they didn't want to sign. I told him he was free not to. He whined about everything he could think of, then eventually told me he'd be hearing from his lawyer. The next morning, surrender lawyer called and asked if I'd be willing to come to their office to sign the contract. I agreed. When I arrived, I learned that surrender lawyer was not actually a lawyer, but a paralegal. He handed me the contract and asked me to sign it. He laughed a little when I told him I'd have to read through it first to make sure nothing had been changed. I read the contract, nothing had been changed, not a single thing. And the HOA president had already signed it with the paralegal as witness. I looked at him and said, why did he sign this? It was stupid to sign it. The paralegal looked at me and said I started telling him that signing it would be a bad decision, but he told me I wasn't being paid to think or give legal advice and to shut up. So I shut up. Wow. I said, do you understand what he signed here? He looked at me and nodded. I asked him if I should have one of the lawyers look at it before giving it to you, and he told me that we had already billed enough for this and that he'd sign it and sue me after their easement was safe. This happened about 1.5 years ago. It took 6 months for the HOA to fully understand how badly they had been caught. They wanted to sue me, but their lawyers explained there was no realistic path to winning. Sweet. Even if the court sided with them, all they would get was the easement contract voided, and the lawyers did not believe the court would side with them anyway. They were adamant about one thing, though. The HOA could not live with the clause that the HOA would pay my legal fees if legal action was taken against me, since as written it was not limited to the HOA taking action. Any legal action from anyone would trigger it. I told them I was prepared to find out in court since the HOA would definitely be the ones challenging it if they tried. I eventually signed an addendum stating that neighbor Ooh would personally pay all my my legal fees unless he held no position at all in the HOA, and that the HOA itself would pay legal fees if the HOA took legal action against me. He resigned from the HOA at the end of that meeting.
Oh my gosh.
I politely told him in front of everyone that he should not sign documents unless he understands what he is signing. He did not look pleased.
There you go.
It came out during the mediation that without the ability to control access to the neighborhood through the security boom, partially on my property, the HOA would be in breach of its own articles and would be dissolved.
That's insane.
I also learned, and this should have been obvious to me, that all the security cameras were wired and all of them terminate in the guardhouse on my property. So it was my way or the end of the HOA. The first mediation was genuinely quite funny. The surrender paralegal was now the mediator, and he did not look thrilled as we assembled, and he called everyone to order. I suspected he had been told to work against me, so I took the initiative. I reminded everyone that I had agreed to let him mediate, but had agreed to no arbitration whatsoever. If I did not feel the proceedings were fair, I would leave, and they could go ahead and sue me. The paralegal brightened up, and things actually went quite well after that. I am writing this after getting home from the latest mediation. I built a paddling pool for the neighborhood dogs.
Oh.
I made it myself. I dug a hole, packed it with stone, and added a concrete finish. It was my first attempt, and if I say so myself, it looked terrible. The HOA called a mediation meeting, what they now do instead of taking official action, and told me as nicely as they could that the paddling pool was an eyesore right in the entrance of the neighborhood. I asked them to put together a list of what needed to be fixed and how to give to me at the next meeting. The list was extensive. It basically required the pool to be rebuilt from scratch. I asked them if there was any way to reduce cost on the work required to bring it up to HOA standards, and they assured me there was not. I thanked them, pulled out a highlighted copy of the agreement where they had committed to get the property to HOA standards and keep it there, and handed it to them along with the list.
Yes!
Oh my god! I told them the HOA usually preferred if these things were dealt with within 30 days. They started arguing until the mediator reminded them that they could not force me to comply without causing the easement to end. They said they would get it done. I also learned a few things about neighbor Ooh today. He sold his property about 3 months back and is apparently leaving the country for Australia. The HOA successfully sued him for a significant amount of money they had lost to his mismanagement during his vendetta against me.
Oh my gosh.
I have no idea what I ever did to upset him. I am not sure if I will keep screwing with the HOA.
Keep doing it.
I already think I am so close to breaking them that the only thing stopping them from canceling the contract is the massive financial loss if they do. A lot depends on how they treat me and my tenants going forward. I do like the monthly payments, so I am motivated to play nice. Neighbor Ooh was right in the end. You really should not sign documents unless you understand what you are signing.
Oh my god.
That's the end of that.